Hey, I have another channel. It's the first time I've uploaded in like over a year. It's about a camera. You should watch it. Thank you.
Last year, I reviewed the MSI Claw, the first Intel-based gaming handheld from a major PC manufacturer. It was expensive and bad. This year, just a few weeks ago, I reviewed the MSI Claw 8, the larger second iteration of that same Intel-based handheld with a beefier SoC. It was actually pretty decent. It performed very well at full power. It seems like Intel fixed its stuff. I liked it a lot, but the ergonomics weren't so great in that form factor, and the price was still pretty terrible. This made me interested in the little brother version. This right here is the MSI Claw 7. They all have such great names. The number at the end of the name is in reference to the size of the screen. Get it? MSI Claw 7, it's a 7-inch screen, and then the other one, 8 inches. Okay. I'm not even saying the full name of the device. This one is very similar to the last MSI Claw, which was also very similar to the ROG Ally line of handhelds. In fact, this has pretty much the exact same screen. Look at the bezels, they're the exact same. I was interested in this because I liked all of the power that the Claw 8 had, and I liked how silent it was, but I didn't like all of the bulkiness. It didn't feel particularly good in the hands. I like the ROG Ally, so ripping off their shape doesn't bother me all that much. The Claw 7 is actually very good. Despite all the other crap Intel has been going through lately, they seem to have really fixed their ARC GPUs. This is definitely a valid contender in the PC handheld space. It definitely puts up a fight against the AMD Z1 Extreme. It even edges out the Claw 8 in performance because the screen is slightly smaller. It is technically the most powerful PC handheld I've ever tested, but like by a hair. And is a hair worth what you're getting here? All this for the price of my current favorite PC handheld? The competition is kind of fierce, so you have to really want those extra few frames that this could get you some of the time. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. And that's why you can't trust other major restaurant apps. But with prosciutto, yes, you can be sure to find the best speck and burrata sandwich in any major city, barring all of these major cities. Aw. Show us the site! Yeah, how do we download it? Yeah, we can do that pretty easily. We just gotta go to prosciutto.com. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Should have used a VPN. Yeah, I should have used a VPN. VPNs can help change your location so that you can access content that might otherwise be blocked in your country. VPNs can also help you encrypt your data so that nobody on your network can see what you're doing, not even your ISP. Surfshark One gets you their VPN, private web search, data leak alerts, and their antivirus. There's no risk to trying Surfshark. They offer a free 30-day money-back guarantee. So, secure your privacy with Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/den, that's D-E-N, for a whole extra 4 months for free. Sorry about that, guys, but now it won't happen again, now that I have Surfshark. That's not what it does! Huh? Yeah, it doesn't clear your browser history, that's a different thing! Oh. Well, thanks for letting me know that. Security! What's security? Ah! This was sent to me by MSI. It's on loan, but after the Claw 8 review, they did say I could keep one of these if I wanted to. I'm not sure that I'm gonna take them up on that. We'll see how this review goes. They sent it to me, and whoever had it before me was also a reviewer who out here was testing the speakers with the Kill by 30 Seconds to Mars and Fleetwood Mac. Which one of you was it? Which one of you didn't wipe the I wiped it for you, don't worry. I like the ergonomics here. Not much has changed since the original MSI Claw. This is pretty much the same form factor with some minor changes, which is fine by me. I think it's a little thinner. Some people don't like the deep grooves that these grips have. The entire unit is a little sharper than an ROG Ally, but I don't mind it really. I think it feels fine in the hands. It's actually slightly lighter than the Ally X, but I can see where those harsh angles around the base of the unit could dig into someone's palms. They did fix the thumbstick, which was something they showed me at a press event a bit ago. and it's definitely noticeable when you're using it. They now have a nice smooth stick gait. It has the same sort of D-pad the Claw 8 has, which was a bit controversial, but I actually don't mind it the more I use it. It catches your thumb pretty well. It's got the RGB so that you know this is for serious gaming, as well as the gamer font on the face buttons, in case you had any doubts.
But they got rid of true gaming. Come on, what happened to true gaming? This is fake gaming?
The triggers are fine. It's actually the shoulder buttons that bother me the most. When I grip a controller, I only use my index fingers for both the triggers and the bumpers. And I like to rest my fingers on the triggers, and when I need to hit the bumpers, I usually hit them with the meat of my fingers like this. It sounds weird when I have to explain it like that, but I bet a lot of you do this too. Pretty much every controller allows us to do this because the bumpers come down to the sides of the controller a bit. Most gaming handhelds let me do this too. The MSI ones put up a little bit of a fight. It's actually really annoying to play a game like Fortnite or Marvel Rivals on here, because I feel like you can't comfortably press the bumpers because they don't stick out as far as they normally would on a controller. This could potentially be fixed with just some 3D printing. You could just replace the bumpers with ones that stick out a little more. But I'm not going to open this up because this isn't mine. Also, why should I have to do that? There are 2 extra buttons on the back, and this is yet another major issue with this device. There is absolutely no way to program these buttons. Huh? What? The MSI software that you use to launch your games and to change your settings is over a year old, and it's never had a way to change these buttons? My left back button is set to toggle the motion controls. You can set that at least. I want the right one to be melee attack, which is usually thumbstick click. Nope, can't do it. The only way to do it is to set it as a macro, but then what if you want to hold the button down? You can't. You can only set it to be a macro, which has a set duration. So you're either holding the button down or you're pressing it once. Very quick. It's a horrible oversight. If you wanted back buttons, you're probably going to have to finagle with some third-party software and hope for the best that they'll even be recognized in that software. I might as well talk about the gyro controls on here. They're pretty decent, but the gyro settings are very minimal. You can't set the vertical or horizontal sensitivity independently from each other. The vertical sensitivity is much higher than the horizontal sensitivity for a game like Marvel Rivals. So I'd like the option to change that. And you can't in the MSI software. Instead of using the MSI utility, you can try something like the Handheld Companion app. I can't figure this shit out. Overall, I do like the way this thing feels. If you like the ROG Ally, I think you'll like the way this feels too. But as stupid as it sounds, those bumper buttons might be a deal breaker for me. I just don't want to play certain games on here because of that. MSI kind of makes the best speakers in the game. The speakers here are also best in class. I'm not sure if they're the same as the ones in the Claw 8, but they are similarly good. Way better than the Lenovo Legion Go's speakers, which might be the worst speakers in the game. MSI also has great fan tech. Just like the original MSI Claw and the Claw 8, this thing is pretty silent. You do hear it ramp up sometimes, but you know, nothing compares to the sounds of the Lenovo Legion Go's jet engine. This has the exact same internal specs as the Claw 8, just in a smaller form factor. That means 32 gigabytes of RAM and an Intel Arc 140V GPU, which is pretty beefy. Compatibility doesn't really seem to be an issue with the Intel GPUs anymore, but it is something to keep in mind if you're interested in one of these. I haven't run into any issues, but you should probably look up whatever games you want to play to see if they will run on Intel GPUs before you get one of these. I think older DirectX games before DirectX 11 might have a problem here, but again, I didn't have any problems. I was mostly playing more modern stuff. Just like the Claw 8, it uses AI to determine how much power the device needs. This feature does not work well on the Claw 8 at all. So all these tests that I'll be doing here are at manual TDP power mode set all the way to the full 30 watts that this is capable of. I'm not even bothering with that AI engine. This should be pretty power efficient though, so this should get you a decent amount more battery life than some of the competition. Not more than the Claw 8, but it should be pretty decent still. The only other spec differences between this and the Claw 8 is the screen, obviously, and also the internal storage. You get 1 terabyte on the Claw 8 and only 512 gigabytes on the Claw 7. This is extremely disappointing because the Ally X is the same price and that has 1 terabyte of storage. You do get a little bit less RAM on the Ally X, but does that really matter? The difference in performance is marginal. The extra storage space would be preferred. Also, the ROG Ally X takes full-sized SSDs, making upgrading the storage a little bit easier. The Claw 7 still takes 2 230-sized SSDs, the small ones. You can upgrade it yourself pretty easily, but you shouldn't have to, you know? The screen is different. The 8 screen is slightly taller. That 8 inches comes with an extra 120 pixels of vertical resolution. So the 7 is rendering slightly less pixels, but only a little bit less. I was already pretty impressed with the performance of the Claw 8, and this just continues that trend. Somehow, this is the highest ranked handheld on the 3D Mark test so far, blasting past the Allies and the Lenovo's. It even slightly beat out the Claw 8. But that's probably because of the slightly lower resolution. But that's still very impressive. You could say it performs so well against the competition because of the 32 gigabytes of RAM, but the Lenovo Legion Go S also has 32 gigabytes of RAM. What's their excuse? Don't actually tell me. I know you're going to tell me it's the budget GPU. Why put that in there then and sell it for $730? There's no excuse. This test that we do is a DirectX 12 test, but it also outperformed everything in a ray tracing test. I'm not really sure how ray tracing works, but this supposedly has less dedicated ray tracing cores than the Z1 Extreme. So this whole thing has been very interesting. But these benchmarks aren't everything. They just give us a broad look at what things could look like when we're playing games on here. They don't show us definitively what games are going to perform like on here. So let's play some games. And you know what? They perform pretty good. Fortnite has 3 performance modes: DirectX 11, DirectX 12, and low performance mode. It defaults to the low performance mode, which I guess is like for mobile GPUs. At full resolution, it's actually pretty choppy. Not as bad as it was on the Legion Go S, but the frame dips are pretty frequent. You're getting over 100 frames at times, but it's not something I would ever want to play regularly. I swapped it over to DirectX 12, and visually that looks fine, and I'm still getting over 100 frames per second at times. And the random dips seem to have stabilized themselves. It was much more stable in DirectX 12. I, however, have not gotten better at Fortnite. I'm dead. Shit. The Ally X, on the other hand, was only getting me around 60 frames with the DirectX 12 renderer. This is probably better suited for the low performance mode renderer, but I was pretty surprised by this difference. Indiana Jones is another one that I wanted to try on here because it's a game that I wanted to play, but also it's a game that requires ray tracing. Supposedly, the beginning of the game is the hardest to run with all the vegetation, and it does run very bad. At low settings, I'm getting under 30 frames with a lot of screen tearing. It's very rough. I managed to squeeze a little more frames out of it by swapping over to the Intel upscaling mode. This is probably lowering the resolution a significant amount, but it's Intel's own upscaling algorithm. Tweaking this setting over to ultra performance actually does increase the frame rate a significant amount. We're now getting over 40 frames per second. And it doesn't really affect the visual fidelity all that much at all, at least to my eye on this small screen. This is probably among one of the heavier performance tests we could do on a handheld like this. I'm gonna try this game on the Ally X as well, just so we can see what the performance difference is. I like to gravitate towards playing games on my Ally X because I have both Windows and Bazzite on there. Bazzite is sort of just Steam OS, so it's a Linux distro. It's just like how Steam OS works on a Steam Deck, but you get some extra power that the Ally X has. Unfortunately, the Bazzite developers aren't that interested in working with this Intel GPU. So there's nothing like Bazzite for the MSI Claw as of yet, but they haven't completely ruled it out. So let's see how this game performs on the Ally X using both Windows and also Bazzite, which is kind of SteamOS. The Ally X running Bazzite can handle Indiana Jones, only after running it in safe mode though. But then it gets pretty decent 38 frames per second in that beginning area. Setting AMD's upscaling mode to ultra performance gets us 50 frames. I'd probably be fine playing it with no upscaling. The game is particularly ugly on here though sometimes. On Windows, it's just ever so slightly rougher, getting around 40 frames, and on Steam Deck, that's 800p, and man, is it ugly. I do have to tip my hat to Bazzite here though. I think it showed the best performance. It's a shame that Bazzite doesn't support any of the Intel handhelds right now. That might be another deal breaker for me. I think realistically, I'm gonna be playing this game probably using Steam Link to my gaming PC. That way I can get the most visual fidelity that I can, because this is such a cinematic game. I don't think super high frame rates matter as much as some good graphical fidelity for a game like this. I would love to be trying Call of Duty on here, but that's something rattling around here. Call of Duty's a 300 gigabyte download. I cannot justify that anymore. 300 gigabytes just to play a couple of domination matches? This thing only has a 512 gigabyte SSD in here. So if I were to play Call of Duty, I would have to download that first, play that, then delete it, and then download all the other games that I want to test. No, thank you. You just don't get to play Call of Duty on here if you want to play any other games. Or you could if Call of Duty is the only game you ever want to play. Realistically, Call of Duty performs probably the same that it does on the MSI Claw 8, which is very good. So if you're interested in that, go watch that video instead. Marvel Rivals also does pretty good on here. I don't love the controls because of the weird bumper shape and the inability to map a melee to the back bumpers properly, but the game performs very good. I played a decent amount on here. The settings I went with were getting me around 120 frames per second in the practice area. When I opened a portal, it only dropped to around 90, which isn't too bad and not very noticeable. Playing a real game got me around 120 frames per second pretty much the whole time, which is the best performance I've gotten at 1080p on any handheld. Although I did have Intel's upscaling on. I set it to balanced. Setting it to ultra performance looks pretty terrible. It's very clearly just a low resolution at this point. Balanced is fine. I also have Intel's frame generation on in the settings. Without frame generation, I only get around 80 frames per second in the practice area and 60 frames per second when a portal opens, which still isn't terrible. I don't mind having frame generation on at these kind of frame rates if it's gonna help smooth out the gameplay. If it can fill in some frame dips, I think it's a great feature to have. This is a pretty substantial improvement over the Ally X, which I have been using to play this game for a while. Although I'll say with frame generation on, you're not really gonna notice much. Overall, it feels pretty great playing the game on here. I like it. Pressing the back button to toggle motion controls is pretty cool. I just wish there was a few more gyro settings by default. Resident Evil 4 at 1080p gets me a little over 50 frames. I did have to play the game for a little bit. The first couple of minutes were a little stuttery. There were frame dips all over the place, but it smoothed out pretty quickly. This is at 1080p with AMD upscaling set to performance. This is pretty much on par with what I've seen on the Ally X. On other devices, I've had to lower the resolution to 720p in order to get similar performance, so I'm not really mad about it. I've been extremely happy with Intel's performance and their compatibility with their GPU. They've come a long way here. Intel has managed to plant their feet firmly in the GPU market. Fun fact, after doing all of this, I decided to dust off my old Intel Arc PC that I got years ago. And that's now the podcast setup rig.
What is that? What are you doing? What is that?
I also decided to try a few of these games on that, and it also has come a long way with the drivers that they have.
I take it back. It's doing a lot of glitchy nonsense. Look at all this and the pop-in, and every once in a while the screen flickers black. It's very strange. It's like stable for the most part. Those shadows are not supposed to flicker like that. Maybe get one of the newer ARC GPUs.
I love what Intel's doing here. Competition is fantastic. I would love to see NVIDIA enter the PC handheld space. That would be something. It would be hot and loud, but it would be something. MSI, on the other hand, does some things right. The speakers are great. The unit is cool and quiet, but their software needs work, and their shoulder buttons force me to readjust my grip. This is their third handheld in a year, so they are clearly invested in this space, but not invested enough to allow for mappable back buttons? Come on, man. But the games run good. This is a great handheld if you're a power user. You're still going to want to look up some of the games that you'd want to play on here just to make sure that they'll run good. But I haven't run into a single game yet that I wanted to play that just didn't. So I think you'll be pretty safe. It also has the same dual Thunderbolt 4 ports that the Claw 8 has, so you can connect an eGPU if you want. I didn't really go into the eGPU compatibility in this video because I did enough of that in the MSI Claw 8 video, and the performance should be the same, so just go watch that. Personally, I'm not sure that this is enough to pry me away from the Ally X. Performance is not all that much better compared to what I'm used to. A handful of frames here or there might be enough to sway me if that's all that's different. Maybe the battery life is something you would really value. But couple that with the oddly shaped bumpers and the lack of bazzite, I'm not sure I want to make the jump. Which is a shame, because after using the Claw 8, I really did think that this would be the one for me. As for recommending this to people, I mean, sure, for the power user who wants to gloat about frame rates, maybe, but let's pile on top of all those cons I already just said. You're only getting 512 gigabytes of internal storage, which makes it a worse value straight up than the Ally X. And put on top of that the fact that MSI's software doesn't work with their own back buttons, so you have to install a third-party software like Handheld Companion to get those to work. We are inching closer to a great competitor to the Z1 Extreme powerhouse. We're on the cusp. I believe in Intel. Maybe the next one will do it for me. So what do you guys think about the MSI Claw 7 AI Plus? That's the full name. I've been leaving that out because it's a dumb name, and also I didn't use any of the AI engine stuff on here because I didn't like it on the Claw 8, and it does the same thing on here. So anyway, what should I have played on here? What would sway my opinion, or what is a reason that you might be interested in something like this? Leave it in the comments below, at me on Twitter, any and all this other social media garbage. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out at the link in the description. If you want to hang out, I stream on here most Sundays at like 8 p.m. Eastern time, and I'm usually messing around with something like this, and we can talk about it in the chat. You can help me out with these videos. You can tell me in real time what I should be doing, but of course, the most important thing you do to help support this channel, just subscribe. I very much appreciate that. Share this video with a friend. That's my food coming out of the oven. Share this video with a friend who's interested in something like this. Thank you very much. I gotta go eat. Bye.